This is Boomer Life on CL 650.
Me so very happy. I'm so glad you came into my life.
And welcome back. This is Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton, and our conversation today is all about Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Our guests are from the Alzheimer Society of B.C. We have CEO Maria Howard joining us in the studio today. And right now, we'd like to say hello to Paul Blanchette from Kamloops. He's on the phone. Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Happy New Year to you.
Well, thanks very much, and same to you.
Thank you. Well, Paul, it's wonderful to have you joining us today. And we usually start off this segment by asking people about their personal connections to dementia. So if you could maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself and your personal connection.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm a professional engineer. My family's grown up and we worked across North America. Came back home to Kamloops about 12 years ago to our hometown to grow up with family and to raise our children here. In the past 4 years, our life has changed direction and gone down a journey of dementia, Alzheimer's, with my wife Linda being diagnosed just about 4 years ago right now. And so, it's a new path that we're on. Let me just put it that way. My part is I'm a primary caregiver. I still work, and I am working mostly from home now. But I am caring for Linda as we go down this journey.
Did Linda have a professional career?
Yes, Linda she's got a degree from UBC, and when we moved, took up a real estate business. She had that in Vancouver, and when we moved to Kamloops, she took that up here and was quite successful in her business here. So she's that, and she's quite an independent person, an excellent skier, got her pilot's license when she was young, so an out there person.
So Paul, do you mind telling us how old you both are?
Not at all. I am a young 61, and Linda is just 60 this year. And we found out about this when Linda was 56, so diagnosed at a younger age for sure.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about that and what the experience was like when you received that diagnosis for Linda.
Absolutely. What I'll do is give you a little bit of a flavor for the couple of years prior, because things were happening and we weren't aware of exactly what it was. But over the couple of years prior, Linda's business actually started slowing down. It was not as successful. She wasn't earning the money that she had been. So just from a business perspective, that started slowing down. She had a couple of car accidents, especially one very close to the diagnosis. And this was unlike Linda, that she had these accidents. And the situation around the accident was quite strange. She had anxiety through the couple of years prior. Now, at her age, we were going, well, this is most likely menopause. So as these symptoms were coming up, we were going to our doctor, obviously, and going through the treatments for these typical symptoms of other things. So that was what it was as we were going along the path. And then Linda started taking some tests for cognitive ability with our doctor. And that was, those tests, we were still trying to find out what was going on. We at that time had no idea at all that where this might go as far as a diagnosis was going. So the symptoms and the treatments didn't really help. The behavior was pretty much the same, and by the process of elimination, we ended up having Linda and myself going to a neurologist here in town. So that was where the serious diagnosis started happening, and Linda had more tests, MRI and other scans, and more diagnosis. And then we were referred to a UBC clinic for Alzheimer's, which ended up being about 6 months later. But we pretty much, through that process of going with the neurologist and with the doctor, we were diagnosed with dementia early in 2012. So it was kind of going down the path, and the final diagnosis came to me as a shock. We were in at the doctor's reviewing the results, and the doctor said, "Paul, give me a call when you get home." And I called him and wasn't really sure what it was about. It was about something. But that's when I got the diagnosis that Linda had Alzheimer's, and it was a complete shock. And more of a shock is because I, like most people, don't fully understand what dementia/Alzheimer's is. And so immediately we dug into, okay, what does this really mean? So it was kind of a build-up, focused, knocking things off. It's not this, not that. And then more serious tests, and then there you go, right in front of us.
It's almost like a process of elimination. So obviously, when you painted the picture that you weren't expecting this at all, it would have taken the wind completely out of your sails, and all of a sudden you're staring at each other, knowing that your life now is going to change forever. Things are going to be a lot different. So what Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, exactly. And the other part of it is we didn't know what different meant. We didn't really know what the journey even looked like. I mean, we had not spent any time looking into this at all. I mean, we certainly had friends and Linda's dad had dementia later, much later in his life. So we had a very high level of understanding. So we didn't know what this journey meant.
And you have a clearer picture of that now, 4 years down the road.
Much clearer picture of it now, for sure.
So, Paul, can you tell us how you made a connection with the Alzheimer Society of B.C.? At what point did you reach out to them?
Well, this happened very close to the diagnosis. The neighborhood that Linda and I lived in, we had a couple of our friends, our neighbors were doctors in Kamloops. It's a smaller town, and one of the doctors is a neurologist, and the diagnosis was there, and they obviously shared that professional information, and one of our close friends who knew us, when our neighbors, reached out right away. He was involved in he's a senior manager at the Investors Group, and already through the walk, they had a very close relationship with the Alzheimer Society of B.C. So he already knew people in town because of their relationship. He reached out immediately, and we had a chat. And he said, "Paul, you have got to go and talk to the folks at Alzheimer Society and have a chat and reach out for help and information." And me, I'm the kind of person that I'm an engineer by training. I need to have information, and I said, absolutely. And within a week of diagnosis, I was meeting with Tara here and getting involved in learning. So that's how we were introduced, and it was that very direct relationship through people in town who cared about us and knew something about Alzheimer's.
So could you just paint us a little bit of a picture now, maybe talk about some of the challenges that you've experienced since you received that diagnosis? Is there any stories that you could share?
Yeah, there are a few. I'll try not to be too much here. But, I think the first thing was us working through the reality of what it meant and then sharing it with our children. My daughter would then be, I think, she'd have been 16, my son 19, both living at home. And so, they had no idea what it was other than as we shared it with them, our journey is quite different, and Mom is on a path on a disease that is terminal, period. And we don't know how long, we don't know what it's going to look like, but we are here right now. And so that, just working through that, the reality, and to learn and understand what the journey might be, was really the first part of the challenge that we had. Linda's been very independent. Right away, she lost her driver's license. The doctor said that she should not be driving, so that went away right away. Also, Linda had just retired from her business because of the disease, which we can now look back on. She was not doing well in the business. We said, well, let's stop that. So she had just retired from the business a few months prior to all that. So that's a change on the financial side for us. As we went down the next few months and a year or so, we realized we had to sell our family home. We had a larger home, 3 levels, and one of the things that affected Linda and affects Linda is her ability to move and cognitively walk and control her body, and so she couldn't go up and down stairs very well, so we had to move homes in the middle of all of this, changing what was was friendly and recognizable to something new. Travel, Linda's ability to travel has gone away. Over the time I have had as a primary caregiver, I've had the blessing of working with my company. They've helped me immensely. And I'm working a much shorter day, a full day, but in a small technology company, we work a lot. And my time now is I work from home mostly, and I'm able to help Linda out. She needs help in that every hour or so for a bit, and cooking and everything else with that. So my life has changed a fair bit. Children living abroad, they've had guilt about living abroad, wanting to help, but can't. Should I be at home, yes or no? So, these are some of the things. Carving out time for me is important. I know that, but it's still difficult to do. So at the end of the day, Linda's disease is progressing. We've had to go from her memory working somewhat to now only in the moment. And so we enjoy the moment a whole lot more than a lot of the short-term memories. So there's a higher level part of the challenges. And one last thing, too, is just working within the healthcare system. Our situation is a little bit different, but the healthcare system is not geared well for dementias. And I'm saying that living in Kamloops, and we've had essentially a rotating door of helpers, and they have varying understanding of dementia and Alzheimer's. And so that's been part of the challenges working through the healthcare system. There's a bunch of stuff for you.
You've painted an excellent picture, Paul. I also understand that you're both advocates for the Society. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work you do to help others that are living with the disease?
Yeah, absolutely. You can tell that I'm relatively outspoken here. Linda and I have been outgoing people our entire lives. We love people. We're comfortable with others. Speaking out, my work has certainly been out there, and Linda's work in real estate, and all she has done, we've been out in front of people. And this was it wasn't really a decision. We just started doing it as a matter of course because we knew we could. So many people, the educational part of this and educating all of the stakeholders, we'll talk a little bit about that later, but so many people know only a fraction of what this means. And from my perspective, Linda and I decided right away we would do all we can to engage in helping because we're not afraid to talk about it, neither of us. Linda knows what the disease is and what it's doing to her, but we're not afraid to talk about it. And, sometimes these are blunt discussions. This disease, Linda will die. There's no cure. And that's the path we're on, and she'll eventually die from disease because she can't control anything anymore. That's reality, and a lot of people don't know that. So given our ease of working with people and we didn't make a decision so much as just started doing it. So that's kind of how we got involved. Linda in our family was selected as the honorary family in 2014 for the walk, and we did a lot of fundraising, and we through that we were doing radio interviews and TV interviews, just talking about the whole thing and the whole issue of Alzheimer's and all the things going on in our experience. So we started doing that. We spoke to Rotary groups. We spoke to local businesses. We had a couple of TV interviews. So we did as much as we could from within Kamloops. And also the family, we do know Terry Lake. Linda worked with him on his campaign, and our kids worked with the Liberal movement here earlier. So we were at least friends, loose friends. Linda was better friends with Terry. And so we were able to just chat with him and talk to him about it as friends, not just him as a minister of health. And so, through that, our family, first Monique, went and spoke at the legislature to the MLAs. She went there a year before us. She was, I think, 16 or 17, Maria, I think something like that.
Yeah, about that.
And she felt passionately about helping as well. And so she went and spoke. Linda and I had already booked a trip to Hawaii then. And so we decided we would just continue with that. Both Linda and I did speak the year later and spoke to MLAs in support, and Linda shared some of her story, and we shared some of our story. So, I think that I know that our relationship with Terry and then also with Todd Stone, who's the Minister of Transportation, who was my ex-business partner, just those friendships allowed us to have a more open door to speak to the provincial government. So we were really happy to be able to do that.
Well, I can tell it you're in it for Alzheimer's, that's for sure, the both of you. And just keep doing what you're doing, Paul. And thanks very much for sharing your story with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure indeed. And, you know, if I may have a final word here, I think the key thing here is that we continue to support the Alzheimer Society of B.C. They have been the glue pulling together all the stakeholders, local government, provincial government, and even the federal government. We have to work together. And that includes the caregivers themselves. We have to bring these people together to be able to move more quickly, and we still need money. So all the best on that, Maria. I'll be doing what I can to help, and
thanks.
I appreciate the time here as well.
Thanks, Paul. All the best for this new year, for 2017.
Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Up next on the show, we're going to meet the MLA for Abbotsford, who is also the Parliamentary Secretary for Seniors, and we'll learn more about dementia policies in this province. That conversation is next on CL 650.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.